Let's begin.
Hello and welcome to Pods Above Replacement, part of the Padres Hot Tub Podcast Network. My name is Raphie Cantor. I am the producer of Padres Hot Tub, and joining me from the Mile High City, he's talking about BASEBALL. It's John Precoda.
HELLO, Raphie, what is going on?
Not much. If you haven't picked it up already, it's finally happening. This is the episode that actually matches our podcast cover art for once, because we're talking about Manny Machado, El Ministro, Mr. BASEBALL himself, and we're going to get to that in a second. But first, we have some quick and exciting housekeeping. So we hope you're watching us on YouTube as always. We're going to be throwing lots of StatCast data at you today, lots of graphs. You can get nerdy with us if you're looking at us, so please join us there. Subscribe, of course. I want to give a quick shout out to Chris Reed for absolutely stepping up the game and crushing this week on YouTube. He's making his read caps, which are really fun to watch. If you're familiar with John Boy breakdowns, they're pretty similar. And he's been doing a couple, and the ones on Ha-Sung Kim, lo and behold, our sweet Korean prince has glowed up. And we have just been like lots of views, lots of subscribers and everything. It's really exciting. So check that out if you haven't already. Of course, the number one way to support the Padres Hot Tub Podcast Network is becoming a patron. Patreon.com/Padres Hot Tub. I've been juicing the Discord this week with some kind of bonus stuff, which has been fun. And specifically, if you're a fan of Yu Darvish, maybe not so fun, but it is a good place to catch up with people and meet some other fellow PAR patrons. Anything you want to add on our Discord before we get into the news du jour?
Now, join us. It's fun.
Great. Short and sweet. Okay, so I don't know if some people are going to remember this. This is kind of a par deep cut, but I want to say 2 or 3 months ago, I sent a LinkedIn request to Ruben Niebla, the Padres pitching coach. I think it was around the time that we did our pitching State of the Union or something. John, he's accepted my LinkedIn request. I'm now connected.
It's come full circle. I love that you announced that you tried to connect with him on the podcast. And then
I didn't keep people updated. Yeah, I'm just whatever. This is a free lottery that we're gonna play right now, and we won potentially. So now, after this episode is done recording, John and I are gonna send a message to Ruben Niebla on LinkedIn, asking him to come on the show. I don't know if that's the appropriate avenue. We might have to end up going through Padres PR. We'll see.
Oh, man.
But certainly, once the season's over, I bet you it'd be kind of hard to get him on during the season. But once the season's over, we might have a chance to get him to come and talk about his philosophies. What do you want to ask Ruben Niebla, John?
I don't know. It depends on what I'm allowed to ask Ruben Niebla. I mean, mostly I want to know about what they're looking for in young pitchers and how much pitch shapes matter and how they try to alter them, and whether that's easy to do in the regular season or if they give them off-season plans. Things like that would be the things that I would be most interested in.
I think it would be funny to have this once in a podcast opportunity and just only ask Ruben Niebla about how he gets such a good goatee. Don't ask him anything about
pepper
pitching.
Him over and over.
Yeah. Just you got the salt and pepper thing going. How did you do that? He's I want to talk to you about seam shifted wake. And I'm I don't care. Okay, well, stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, we're going to talk about the leader of the San Diego Padres, a long-awaited episode for us, Mr. Manuel Machado. Manny Machado, some quick hits on him. Born on July 6th, 1992. He's just turned 31 years old. That makes him which horoscope sign, John?
That makes him a Cancer. The crab, not the thing that messes up a clubhouse, I hope.
Yeah. It's no wonder he's so gosh darn emotional, John. That's what I said when you
know.
told me he's a Cancer.
That's what North County Enthusiast is always saying too. He's always, if you're not on the Discord, you got to go in for the North County Enthusiast horoscopes. They are so good. He loves to talk about them. Hit him up. It'll be worth it for you.
He's got a crystal ball over there. And so Manny, fiery in the clubhouse, unlike his water sign, which is Cancer, but is still quite emotional, and that makes sense. Manny was taken in the, of course, Mr. 305 himself, grew up in the Miami area, and he was taken in the 2010 June amateur draft. And before I tell you when he was picked, I want to read a little scouting report. This is from the Perfect Game Showcase, which, of course, is one of the most prominent high school showcases in baseball. And it was in 2009 when Manny Machado went there, and this was his scouting report from that showcase. Quote, Manny Machado is a 2010 shortstop with a 6'2", 180-pound frame from Hialeah, Florida, who attends Miami Brito High School. Lean athletic frame, projects large. Smooth footwork at shortstop, quick hands, showed good arm strength. Athletic actions on all plays, solid body control. Start to swing with wrapped bat, but catches up to 90-plus fastballs just fine. Has leverage and hits balls hard in games. Gets good extension. Swing looks better against higher velocity. Pitched, John. Pitched from three-quarter arm slot. Good, easy arm action. 90-mile-an-hour fastball. Has good movement.
Ooh.
Showed some good curveball spin as well. I did not know this. Scouts need to keep a close eye on this talented player. Good student. Verbal commitment to Florida International University. So,
and they plucked him away from Florida International? Wow.
Do you know what the Florida International mascot is?
It is it like an owl?
It is not an owl.
No, that's Florida Atlantic. I'm sorry, I cut out, did you?
No. It is not an owl. It is...
Okay, because that's Florida Atlantic. Florida International, is it a reptile?
It's not a reptile. It is a mammal. Okay, it is the Panthers, the Florida International Panthers.
Okay, yeah, that rings a bell.
Their mascot specifically is Rory the Panther, but Rory is spelled like R-O-A-R, like roar.
Oh,
E.
God.
Yeah, I know.
Some dad came up with that.
Yeah, I know. So it's a good thing Machado didn't go there. So he was taken in 2010. By the way, I've never seen him pitch in a game before for the Padres, like in the garbage time. Have you? I don't recall.
No, that'd be terrible. I mean, he does obviously have a strong arm. We've all seen that, but that he's the player that I would, among the players that I would least like to see throw out their arm. Although it would be fun to see. It would be fun to see him and Tatis each take half an inning and see what happens.
That's what I mean. Like in a world or complete vacuum, like nothing, no stakes, anything like that. Like that's really, I want to see Machado and Tatis throwing. So he was taken in the 2010 draft with the 3rd overall pick. Oh, here's a fun thing that I didn't even think to pull before we started recording. Do you know who the 2 players were that were taken ahead of him?
Let's see.
You know who both of them are. They're both active players.
2010. Was that the Bryce Harper draft or was that before?
It sure was.
Yeah, so Bryce Harper was one. Was that Tyone year?
It sure was. Very good, John Precoda. Bryce Harper taken 1st overall, Jameson Tyone taken 2nd overall by the Pittsburgh Pirates, and Manny Machado taken 3rd overall by the Baltimore Orioles. So we kind of like went back and forth about like how much to talk about Machado on the Orioles in this episode. He was really good, you guys. He was really good at a very young age. And I don't necessarily know that it has to go that much more in depth than that, because a lot of the trends that we're going to talk about are things that were consistent with his, first couple years in the Padres. And then we're going to talk about how things have potentially changed a little bit. So historically, Manny Machado has hit the absolute snot out of the baseball. He's consistently ranked in the, top 10% or more in terms of exit velocity up until this season, or the last couple seasons actually. Always kind of hovering around 91, 92 mile an hour average exit velocity, and getting really close to the league leaders in terms of max exit velocity, 116 mile an hour, 100, and in 2021 he topped out at 119.6. was his fastest exit velocity. And because of that, because he's hitting the ball so hard, he is somewhat of a Statcast darling. He really has had high expected batting averages for his entire career. Hovering in the 280s, 290s, eclipsing 300 in the pandemic shortened season. And, really a lot of Manny Machado's value and prowess is derived from his hard hit tool, John.
Yeah, we're going to come into a formerly debated topic, which is how much his bat speed plays into that and how valuable that is in terms of the aging curve. So one does wonder whether when your bat speed slows down in your 30s, how much of your exit velocity falls off, and that's obviously what a lot of his values derive from when he's at the plate.
Yeah. And one of the things I wanted to touch on before we get to that discussion is something that I find very, very ironic, because 2021 for Manny Machado, I wouldn't call 2021 a disappointing season. He put up 4.2 WAR, but he, I think for a team that maybe could potentially expect 5 or maybe even 6 WAR from Machado in literally his prime year, age 27, age 28 season, 4.2 was kind of modest. It was it was okay, this is respectable, but not shattering worlds. Just paying for his value in his contract, basically. And ironically, last season, which was Machado's, near MVP season, 7.2 FWAR, obviously led to the massive extension he got. He was actually, statistically, from a Statcast standpoint, a much better underlying hitter in 2021 than he was in 2022. He had an expected WOBA of 376 in 2021 against an actual WOBA of 350 versus 2022, in which he had an expected WOBA of 338 and an actual WOBA of 382, which put him in the top 5 or 6% of the league. So, what is this? Just randomness, John? What is this attributed to?
Baseball being stupid. There's at the end of this document, you can see that I put up a Zips projection percentiles for Manny Machado in 2023, and obviously it's a different year than 2021 or 2022. But he's basically the same player. He's a year or two older, but a 4.3 WAR season is what they would call a 40th percentile season for him, and a 7.2 WAR season is what they would call a 90th percentile season for him. So, he's hitting the ball basically the same, but his percentile outcome was slightly below what you might expect for him one year, and then well above what you'd expect for him the next year. And just as a method for negotiating going forward, I think it's a good idea to maybe, when somebody hits their 90th percentile projection, don't negotiate that year.
Don't make that their free agent year, you're saying. Maybe wait a year while you still have them under contract and see how they perform, as opposed to picking their best season and being this is the one that we're going to base your deal off of. Yeah. You would think that would be something that would be known. But here we are. So his average exit velocity, it's something that we wanted to touch on, as we mentioned. In 2021, we're going to throw a graphic up on the screen so you can see this. It's on the far right side of the graphic. Basically, the percentile ranks of where all of these stats, where Manny compares to all of his peers. And in 2021, his average exit velocity was in the 96th percentile. That's a solid A. That is a 4.0 grade average. 2022 is MVP, near MVP season. That slipped just a little bit to 89th percentile, which isn't in itself alarming. I think that's just some natural variance, whatever. 2023, that number is down to the 75th percentile. Now, I want to kind of cushion the potential negativity that's coming here by saying that Manny has had lower exit velocity percentile seasons in his past before. In 2020, in which, by the way, he was very good. It was a short season that doesn't count, and nothing from that season counted. But he was still very good, and he was in the 73rd percentile last season. And all the way back in 2016, when he was a mere 24 years old, he had a 73rd percentile season as well. So just because he is in the 75th percentile this year and he'd previously been pushing 90, that's not in and of itself like a huge concern. It's just whether or not this is a trend now. And the trend would be in line with what we see from most other human beings that play the game of baseball, which is that bat speed and therefore exit velocity tends to be one of the attributes that hits the aging curve the hardest. And sort of, it's not as precipitous of a decline per se. It's more of a cliff jump of a decline. So we just got to be aware of that.
I would like to say that like this, it looks scary when you just list those 3 years, but like if you invert them and instead do like 2020, 2019, and 2018, it would look even like just as scary in terms of like the fall off. And then he was back up to a 96 exit velocity season right after. So it's a trend, but it's a very small trend so far. Yeah.
It's again the sort of thing where like we're just gonna have to see next year. You know what I mean? And like then at the end of next year we'll know, and then we'll be like, oh, this was the trend. You know what I mean? So but one of the other trends for Manny Machado's career, John, this dude loves hitting sliders. Like absolutely effing crushes sliders. And if you're looking on YouTube right now, you can see I pulled the run values from 2021, 2022, and so far in 2023, just to see how major league hitters perform against the sliders and who are the most productive hitters producing the most run value against sliders in each of those years. And what you'll notice is that Manny Machado is in the top 4 in each of those years. And in 2021, he was number 2, producing 13 runs just against sliders alone. And in 2022, he was number 1, producing 18. Tied with Nico Horner, actually. Shout out Nico Horner, I guess. But
you always got to get in the one Nico Horner compliment per game.
Always get the one Nico Horner compliment in there, exactly. And in 2023 so far, which has not quite been, potentially the year that we would hope from Manny Machado, he still is number 4 in all of baseball with 12 runs generated against sliders this season so far. And he is, has a 283 batting average, a 707 slug this season, a 422 WOBA just against sliders. And when it gets a little bit more granular, John, some of the stuff becomes even more stark.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you put up the gross numbers, and they are nasty in the synonym for gross, in that he's crushing baseballs. But it does end up looking like he's just great against sliders, which he is overall. However, it's a very specific kind of slider that he's good at, and those are basically mistake sliders. So if you hit that low and away zone on Manny Machado, he doesn't hit the baseball. And when you leave it up like right down the middle, or on like the inner part, low and in, or low and over the middle, he crushes them. So this year he has on pitches that I said are either low and in, low and over the middle, or just straight up over the middle. He has a 634 WOBA, and for his career has a 546 WOBA. However, when you do place that perfect slider right on the corner, he has a 112 WOBA this year and a 221 WOBA for his career. So it is interesting that like folks continue to challenge him with sliders when, I mean, we know that the average pitch misses by 13 inches or so, but if you miss by 13 inches, you're going to get smoked. But if you place it, you're going to have a good result. So like, are you feeling lucky, punk? That's what it seems like. It is. Like,
yeah. And I mean, that kind of transitions us to our next topic, which is, how Manny has evolved as a hitter potentially a little bit, which is that, from his time on the Orioles, through his brief time in Los Angeles, and then now into the Padres, Manny has always been someone who's performed well in terms of underlying statistics against fastballs. That trend has really only started to change, ironically, last season in his near MVP season, which, we're going to talk about the ways in which that season was an anomaly. But, from 2015 all the way through 2021, he had an expected WOBA of about 400 or greater against fastballs each of those years. And in 2022, that number dipped all the way down to just above 350. And this year, it's at about 360. So, when we're talking about why pitchers would throw Manny Machado sliders, historically, it's because, well, he hits fastballs too. Now, if he, and we're going to determine again next year, we're going to have more information, but if he cannot hit the fastball with the authority that he once hit the fastball, then you're going to see pitchers throwing Manny Machado's more fastballs because he's going to always punish mistake sliders. Like, I feel confident in saying that in year, 4,000 of this deal, or whatever. Like
that is what it ends, 4,000.
Yeah, that
you
Manny
heard
Machado.
It here first.
Yeah, that Manny Machado is still going to punish mistake sliders. The question is, like, are pitchers even going to throw him sliders? Because will he be able to, catch up to fastballs, et cetera, et cetera. So that's my trend to watch for Manny Machado. I mentioned 2022. It's pretty remarkable what Manny Machado did in 2022 because he not only outperformed his expected numbers to a certain extent, but for the entire year of 2022 against off-speed pitches, Manny Machado had a WOBA of 495. He faced 267 off-speed pitches in 2022, and he maintained a near 500 WOBA. So I bring that up because basically everything else from 2022 is in line with like what you'd expect. He didn't really blow his expected WOBA versus WOBA numbers away against, a lot of these other pitches that much in 2022. He actually, I will say, breaking pitches historically, his biggest tool in the tool bag, the sliders, absolutely crushing them. He had a really, really poor expected WOBA of 302 against breaking balls last season, but he put up an actual WOBA of 399. And, like I said, expected WOBA of 372 against off speed, actual WOBA of 495. And then his performance against fastballs was exactly in line with his expected number. 353 expected, 351 actual WOBA. So all it took was him doing what he was expected to do on fastballs and wildly overperforming on breaking and off-speed pitches. Yeah. And you get what you get, which is, a 7+ WAR season that kind of defied what we were expecting. And it kind of brings us to the interesting thing about Manny Machado this season versus last season, which is I'm going to try and do my best 30 for 30 voice, John. So
nice. I'm excited.
Give me 1 second. What if I were to tell you that Manny Machado this year and Manny Machado last year are basically the same player? So tune in to ESPN. But yeah, like let's talk about this, because Manny Machado last year had a 338 expected WOBA, and this season Manny Machado has a 336 expected WOBA. I'm not great at math, but that is within 2 points of each other. Now, in terms of actual WOBA, last year Manny Machado had a 382, and this year he has a 335. So Machado this year is, one might say, the real Manny Machado, like the real, will the real Manny Machado please stand up? Like, he's performing what basically is in line with his projections in terms of expected numbers, and last year he just wildly outperformed it. What the fuck, John? Like what am I supposed to make of this?
It's almost like baseball is stupid. It's and that, a 90th percentile season does include having, good luck on batted balls, so he did overperform last year in terms of like how the bat was actually contacting the ball and like what the results were. And it was a 90th percentile season. That's how baseball works. Sometimes you get lucky, right? Sometimes you get unlucky. But the only thing that is concerning here is I mean, your production falls off in terms of batted ball quality when you're 31, like breaking news. That's not super shocking. The only problem here is that we chose to have that inflated year where his WAR ended up being like as much as the last 2 years combined, actually more than that. And then that's when we chose to sign him. That's the only part that like continually frustrates me.
If you're sensing a theme here, we will be coming back to this later in this episode. Some other interesting tidbits from this season. We talked a little bit about the down and away sliders. Turns out Manny Machado doesn't like any pitches down and away at all. One of the things that I found interesting, just looking at his pure heat map in terms of like where pitchers are throwing the ball, pitchers are throwing chase pitches down and away to Manny Machado 25% of the time. 25% of all pitches he faces in 2023 are balls that are down and away, which I found fascinating. And if you look at swing percentage that's breaking down, part of the reason is because he doesn't like to swing at pitches down and away. If you compare all of the 9 game day strike zones that StatCast has, and you can see this on screen, you just think of them zones 1 through 9, 1 being up and in, 9 being down and away. So 1, 2, 3 top, 4, 5, 6 middle, 7, 8, 9 at the bottom. And the number 9 zone, the down and away zone that is a strike, he swings at 60% of the time. Now, compare that to, for instance, the down the middle zone, the number 5 zone, 78%. His up and middle, number 2 zone is also 78%. His inside pitches, 80% he swings at on a middle in pitch. And even on the ones that are on the corners, up and in 66%, down and in 63%. So 60% down and away means he's not swinging at those strikes as much as the other ones. And what are pitchers trying to do? Basically, they're trying to place a pitch perfectly that they're going to get called for a strike or be a borderline pitch, because Manny's expected WOBA on pitches in the number 9 strike zone, so these are strikes that are down and away, is 219, by far and away his lowest expected numbers. He's slashing a 232 batting average, a 224 on base, and a 250 slug on pitches that are there. So it becomes evident kind of what the book is on Manny Machado is try and place a pitch down and away, hope it doesn't leak in for, especially if it's a slider, for a mistake, and hope for the best, because he's going to be really reluctant to swing at those pitches, and if he does, he doesn't produce good results. So is that something that you think tracks, John, in terms of like, if I'm a pitcher, like is that what you're thinking, like, for Manny Machado, I'm going to try and throw it down and away?
Absolutely. And if you'll remember from like the Juan Soto episode, we said basically this exact same thing. It's also that pitches low and away Juan Soto struggled against. And the thing is, Juan Soto has great opposite field power, but he has no opposite field power when you throw low and away. And Manny Machado is the same way. It's like if you spot that pitch, you will be successful against him. He's not going to chase a ton, especially if it's out of the zone, which is good. That's obviously part of his game plan as well. He's like, if there's not 2 strikes on me, I don't have to chase, so I'm not going to protect that part of the zone. I'll just, if you hit your spot, great job. And if you don't, then I'm going to crush you. It's all good strategy. It's not like he's making a mistake. It's just how often are pitchers able to hit that spot. And the data suggests that it's not as much as you would think, considering how much they're like trying to.
Yeah. So a couple of other tidbits about 2023 before we move on to kind of a larger conversation about Manny's career that John's going to take the driver's seat on. He had obviously a really abysmal start to his season this year. He had a WOBA of sub 300 in April and May. And I thought what I wanted to bring up, because I brought up the pitchers list stats last episode that I thought were super interesting, and I'm learning more and more about them every day. But I was curious, how Manny Machado's performance that has changed in terms of like how his approach has changed, because what pitcher list is really good at is like looking at swing aggression or valuing what a hitter's decision is. Like did when they swung, was it a good pitch that they were swinging at? Was it a pitch that they could have expected good results on? and vice versa, and it rates them on that. And so one of the things that I thought was interesting is if you look on screen, you'll see Manny Machado's swing aggression, and it doesn't have dates. It's done based on rolling 400 pitches, but if you can just think about it over the course of the season, you'll basically be in line. And you can see in May and June when Manny Machado was going through this kind of, nadir, for lack of a better word, of
That's a
his
great
offensive
word.
ability, his swing aggression absolutely skyrocketed. And in, that 600 to 1,000 pitch range, he was in the over the 90th percentile of swing aggression in baseball. He was just this is for me purely a pressing period like that I saw for Manny, where it's like, okay, like he is going up and he's getting super frustrated, especially because his expected numbers in May were noticeably higher than his actual numbers. So April he was just straight bad, but in May his expected numbers were a little bit better, but he wasn't getting those results. And then it's one of those things that we've talked about with Fernando Tatis, John, of like, okay, like your process is good and you're hitting the side of the ball, but you're not getting the results. So then you start pressing and then you actually start sucking. And so, and Machado kind of extended his slump in 2023 by getting super aggressive at the plate in May and June. And then lo and behold, as his swing aggression dropped in July, his numbers got better. He got more comfortable. He didn't feel the need to kind of go and chase as much as he did. And now we should be looking at the decision value metric on screen. You could see that Manny Machado's decision value metric, especially for the last like month and a half or so, he's like comfortably above the 90th percentile. I would say probably one of the best in baseball at that point in terms of runs added per 100 pitches based on the pitches he's deciding to swing at or deciding to take. So, Manny is a streaky hitter. This is something that's been consistent throughout his career. But, one of those troublesome things is that if you hit a slump and then you press to try and get yourself out of the slump, and instead of keeping your process consistent, you can see where it actually extends the slump. And this is kind of some underlying data to show that. Really quickly, and then we can kind of talk about Manny on defense. He had a truly remarkable July, as we've said, but specifically on breaking balls, on those sliders that we've talked about, he was like God tier. He had a 540 expected WOBA. And on 23 breaking balls that he put into play, 23 pitches, he had 7 home runs, a 407 batting average, a 1222 slug, and a 540 expected WOBA, as I said. So that'll turn your season around a little bit, is a nice month like that. And John, is Manny Machado going to win the Gold Glove this year at long last?
I mean, he should. Well, it's going to be a good competition. He's obviously still very good. One of the things that gave like Arenado a little bit of an advantage over Manny Machado in like Zip's projections going forward is that for some reason they expected his glove to stay. I have no idea why, but apparently Manny's was supposed to fall off quicker, and it certainly doesn't seem as though it is. He's still killing it. I think part of it was probably that last year, last year his defense fell off during that period in which he was hurt. So maybe that like hurt how he is viewed going forward. But he's been tied for the best third baseman so far in 2023 with Brian Hayes at 12 outs above average, 9 runs prevented. Obviously, that's like about a WAR, a little bit over a WAR just by itself. So the defense is playing. And so if he could keep that up, then his bat is allowed to fall off a little bit for him to be worth his contract. The question is, 1, can he keep it up? 2, for how long? And 3, is his bat going to sustain?
Yeah, one of the good things about the Gold Glove for Manny this year is that traditionally, like, you have to be good at defense, but also, like, you need to be a good hitter. Like, why do you think Juan Soto was nominated for a Gold Glove last year? I mean, he was objectively terrible. And for Brian Hayes, who has been excellent, like absolutely excellent in terms of, he's literally keeping pace with Manny Machado. Like, that's incredible. He's not a hitter. He's just not.
Yeah.
Like, has a 91 WRC plus this year. And in the last 2 seasons, he's had an 86 and an 85 WRC plus. which is, by the way, tough for the Pirates. I mean, they have him on a great cost control deal. I don't, not tough. That's not what's tough for them. It's just that like you're going to need a little bit of offensive production from your third baseman. And so right now, for instance, Brian Hayes has a 1.9 F4 on the season. So with all that defense, still he's not had that much production, and Manny is up to 3.2. So, I think because the Gold Glove is inherently stupid in terms of the way it's voted on, I do think Manny actually has a really good shot this year. So we'll see on that front. All of that's to say, let's add all of this together and let's start talking about Manny Machado from a career standpoint. And, one of the things that John and I consistently talk about is value, like in terms of actual monetary production versus how much they've been paid, and what kind of production surplus you're getting from that. So if you're looking on screen now, you can see Manny Machado throughout his career has been incredibly valuable. He's produced $390 million in value, according to Fangraphs. And his salary so far, the money he's actually been paid for that, is $163 million, of which the vast majority has come from the San Diego Padres. So a $230 million surplus in terms of value. That's a lot. That's fantastic. That's a win. And it also goes to show you why signing Manny Machado to that initial, 10-year, $300 million deal in 2019, was absolutely the right move. And now we're going to talk about what's potentially lying ahead. And I think John's going to start us off with some sort of game.
Heck yeah, game time. So, one, yes, signing a 26-year-old to a good contract or a big contract is the time in which to sign somebody to a big contract. It's the reason why Juan Soto is going to make so much money as well. But the game that we're going to play, we're going to put up 3 players' careers up on the screen, and they're 3 third basemen who had great careers, and I put up their ages, like when they entered the league, up to their age 30 season. Wow. And one of these 3 is Manny Machado, and then 2 are other third basemen. They were players that played primarily through like the 2000s and then into the 2010s. All good players through their age 30 season. Do you have any guesses at which of these players are, like who they might be, or would you rather have like a multiple choice question? How do you want to do it?
Well, I can knock off one of them. But player B is Manny Machado. So I know that because I've been staring at his stat sheet for the last 24 hours putting the show together.
So studying does pay off.
Yes, it turns out, John, that studying does pay off. So that leaves players A and players C. I'm really intrigued by this, and I want to ask some hint questions.
Okay.
And I hope are either of these players still active?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
Okay, that's good to know. And they were both third basemen.
Yep.
And they were playing in primarily the 2000s?
Yes.
Okay.
2000s and into the 2010s.
2000s and into the 2010s. Okay. Is one of these players Scott Rowland?
Ooh, good guess. I did pull him up, but no, neither of these are Scott Rowland.
Okay. I honestly might need... Okay, hang on. Who's this dude who has a 9.7 F4 season?
I'll give you a hint. I've talked about him on the podcast before. I referenced him in terms of as you age, your approach at the plate, how to kind of take advantage of the fact that your bat speed is falling off.
Okay.
He is an idol of Manny Machado as well. Somebody who you'd like to like have the same career
emulate.
As.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it Adrian Beltre?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
One of them is, yes.
Okay, one of them is Adrian Beltre, but I actually don't know which one is Adrian Beltre.
Yeah.
But I'm going to guess player C is Adrian Beltre.
It is not. It's player A. And
really?
Player A is the success story. So he is the one who, up to age 30, he had 41.3 F4 in his career to that point, which is less than Manny Machado's 50, but fairly close. How many F4 do you think that he had the rest of his career? So
a lot more than that
31.
because I'm looking at his WRC plus and I'm like, okay, he's got a 25. Did he win the MVP that year, the 9.7 F4 season?
Actually, I don't know. I am sure he was in the competition for it, but I don't remember if he actually
So he has
won.
a 161 WRC plus in his age 25 season. And the rest of his 20s, he doesn't go above 116, and it spends a lot of it in like sub 100 water. So this is why I was like, who is this one-hit wonder who, all of a sudden, had this 9.7 F4 year and then was like kind of fine the rest of his career? So Adrian Beltre, and I'm curious now about the rest of his career. What did those numbers look like?
So this is the success story, which is a little bit harrowing to me because it's like, this is the probably the best that you could ask for. It's what Manny Machado has referenced in terms of who he wants to emulate, the career he wants to have. And like I said, he had 41.3 F4 up to this point. He lasted forever. And the rest of his career, he only put up 42.5 F4, which is a lot, inarguably, and worth the contract. But it's also like not extraordinarily above what you would expect for the contract that we gave Manny Machado. It's not, it's reasonable. It's not like you got a bunch of surplus, even though this was like a great outcome. So he is who we want Manny Machado to kind of finish up his career as. Adrian Beltre ended up playing through his age 39 season, so had the longevity that we would hope that Manny Machado provides. And then player C is a little bit more of the harrowing story. He was a great player, obviously. He put up basically the same F4 as Manny Machado through his career to that point in fewer seasons. Any guesses on who it might be? I'll give you a hint. NL East.
Oh, no. Okay. Is it David Wright?
David Wright.
Okay.
That's correct. I thought you might go with Chipper Jones, but
yeah,
he was a little bit earlier, I guess. So David Wright to this point had 48.7 F4, which is 1.3 fewer than Manny Machado. What would you say, how many F4 do you think David Wright had after his age 30 season? This is the thing that if it happened, it would crush our like entire roster.
Did he put up like 5 F4 the rest of his career?
No, Raphie, he put up 2.5 F4 for the rest of his career. After putting up nearly 50 up through his age 30 season, he fell off.
Oh my God, John.
To the point that... So that is a potential outcome, by the way. And it was a potential outcome in the, I don't know. There's at least a potential that he might have been juicing at some point in his career. Not throwing that allegation at him. He probably didn't, I would say. But, Manny Machado doesn't have access to that. He has access to modern, health care,
He just needs to get ringworm, dude. He'll be fine.
Ringworm does pay off. But I'm just so, those are the two, if you're putting through, the error bars on what we would expect from Manny Machado, the positive outcome is kind of being worth his contract, and the negative outcome is, crippling to a roster.
Yeah. So with that in mind, we're going to kind of take a look ahead to Manny Machado. This is something that John and I have talked about previously, so I don't know that we're going to spend a ton of time talking about his 10-year Zips projections, which, if you can guess by the tenor of what we've said so far, are not great, John. What does Zips have to say about what they think of Manny?
They think that by the time 2028 rolls around, he's going to be a below average starting player. So he'll drop below that 2 WAR mark that is an average player, thinking his bat will drop off to be a 90 WRC plus type bat, and his defense will be average, about average. And the thing is that this is a very recent projection. This is as of a few weeks ago. So it does take into account the fact that his defense has been good so far this year in his age 30 season, but it still is taking into account how his bat is seemingly starting to slowly fall off. It does take the current numbers as a trend rather than an aberration, and that he'll improve to the mean. But it's scary. So the Zips projections for Manny Machado through the 2030 season are worth like four, like it was like 3 or 4 more FWAR than Jake Cronenworth if you put him at second base, and like,
yeah,
that's like, so like, 40-50 million dollars more than we should have paid Jake Cronenworth is what they would expect to pay Manny Machado. And they even came out with an article right before Manny Machado signed with us in February of 2023. And the article was called "Opting Out May Not Be Machado's Best Move." Opting out of his 5-year, $150 million contract after Nolan Arenado, by the way, 1 year before, opted into a 5-year, $144 million contract. And we signed him for 11 years, $350 million, with knowing the aging curves that are going to come up. It was a kind of a wild. We signed him for more from his age 30 through like 41 seasons than we did from his age 26 through 35 seasons. Which there's inflation, but 26 is not, you're not getting another age 26 season at a Manny Machado, or 27 or 28, but you are getting a lot of late 30s years. And we can also put this aging curve up that Fangraphs put out, which just shows a precipitous drop off as you hit your 30s. And from all generations, including the steroid era, you fall off so precipitously once you hit age 30, to the point where, like, when you're age 35, suddenly you're like 30 WRC plus points lower, which would, like I said, make him a below average hitter if he fell off to the normal rate. And then by the time he's 38, 39, now we're talking 60 point drop off, which would make him not even a major league player.
Yeah, and I really like this when the Zips article came out, and they were talking about showing WAR that very famous Hall of Fame players have put up in their 20s versus what they put up in their 30s. And you talked about Adrian Beltre. Another person I would bring up is Wade Boggs, who is like maybe the best case scenario, where Wade Boggs was very healthy throughout his 30s. He had almost 7,000 plate appearances and ended up putting up more WAR in his 30s than he did in his 20s, which is obviously very exceptional. But someone who's like a little bit closer, just a little bit ahead of Manny Machado in terms of results versus projections, is someone whose name I've already invoked on this podcast, Scott Rowland. So Scott Rowland in his 20s put up 47.8 FWAR. That's very close to Manny Machado's 46.6. One of the things that's also worth noting when you look at this graphic, which I'm going to put up, it's very big, so you might have to zoom in or whatever, but I'll try and do my best visually. Is that Manny Machado racked up a ton of plate appearances in his 20s because he was playing from such a young age. He has 6,273 plate appearances in his age 20 seasons. That's more than like anyone ahead of him on this list, except for Robin Yount. Except for Robin Yount. But yeah, like he just had he was very healthy throughout his 20s, and he played a lot. So that was very helpful in him racking up 46.6 FWAR. Scott Rowland, like I said, 47.8 in his 20s. In his 30s, Scott Rowland put up 22 FWAR. He slashed 274, 344, 447. Machado is expected to put up below that, by the way. 20.6 is the projection in his 30s.
And honestly, the Scott Rowland outcome was like pretty good. It's like that's based on this. It's like it was a good outcome, and we're hoping for better. To make our contract, he has to be way better.
He has to be way better. That's the point. If Manny Machado had Scott Rowland's 30s, which I think that we would be okay. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not like, let's just put the money aside for a second. If you said in a vacuum, Manny Machado was going to have Scott Rowland's 30s, you'd be like, great, cool. Scott Rowland, Hall of Famer. Awesome. I'll take that.
Yeah.
But that contract, if you were to do it actually for its value, would be somewhere around $200 million for those 10 years. And the difference is the $150 million extra that is being paid. You know what I mean? So
is that all?
That's the sizable thing. Again, it's like, I'm just like scrolling up, like he would need to have what George Brett had in his 30s, which was putting up nearly 34 WAR in his age 30 to 40 season. And that still would not pay for the $350 million on a pure dollar per dollar basis. That would get us a lot more in the area code. Sorry.
There's literally only like 6 or 7 players in the history of baseball who were as successful, like who are stars in their 20s and put up enough money or put up enough valuable to make this contract worth it. Like, so there's a handful of players ever that would make this contract worth it. It's not a 50th percentile outcome that we're looking for. We're looking for literally like a 95% outcome in order just to make the contract worth the money spent.
Yeah, and if we could just move down to Manny Machado's 2023 ZiPS projection percentiles from that article that you referenced earlier that came out before Manny got his extension. One of the things that was noted is that a 50th percentile outcome for Manny this year would have been 4.8 WAR. And it looks like he's probably going to come close actually to like a 30th percentile projection, which is 3.8 WAR. That's kind of what he's on pace for. That entailed a 115 WRC plus, and this year so far, Manny Machado has a 115 WRC plus. So if he just finishes out on that, he will have around a 30th percentile year. We're asking for Manny to put up somewhere close to his 80th percentile, like for the rest of his contract? ? Honestly, we're asking him to be more than he has been. His career WRC plus is 123, and if he's a career 123 WRC plus player, he would need to do that for the rest of his career every year for this contract to get close to being worth what it's being paid. So, yeah, I don't know. Do you want to add in any more of that?
There's just this one thing. This is the last graphic that I put on this spreadsheet, which is like you could see what ZiPS originally projected after he signed it in age 26 year. You can see what they originally projected for him every single year and what his actual output was. And every single year he underperformed, except for the 1 year that we decided to sign him to a huge contract. Like he could have signed, like if you wanted to re-up, any of those years would have been better. This year would have been better. And we did it. First of all, we shouldn't have done it in the first place. But we also, if we are going to do it, chose literally the point period in time that was the worst possible time to sign somebody to a contract.
So before we get out of here, because obviously this has gotten a little bit glum, and John and I are wont to do that sometimes. But
the numbers are okay.
Yeah,
the numbers.
This is just what the numbers are. They're cold. And like, legitimately, I think that there is something to be said about. I think we, as Padres fans, can start to just hope on people, and I think that that's not specific to us. That's certainly something that every franchise does. But I think it's sort of worth just kind of taking a sobering look at stuff. And so if you're listening to this podcast, that's what we're going to try and get you. The truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. But let's talk about what a best case scenario would be to kind of end the show. Like we've talked about what the projections are, and we've also talked about, by the way, what happens when the projections don't go so well, which includes the season, which is that, not living up to stuff. What does a Manny Machado contract that pays off or not, it just comes close to paying off? Like what will make you okay? This is a personal question. This is not like a numbers question. What will make you okay with the Machado deal in, it being what it is, John?
From a not numbers-based answer, the only thing that I could answer is so I think that we paid a premium. I think we just did. The only thing that would make it worth it to me is if the portion of his contract in which he is likely to perform to the value of the contract, where you're actually getting Manny Machado value for Manny Machado money, in that window, we have a few deep runs. And he is a major contributor to, like, we wouldn't have won without him. And you can't just every year just get a star onto your team. So we have a star during his prime still, maybe the latter end of his prime, but his prime. We need to go on a run as a team because of Manny Machado for his contract to be worth it. And then while I, go through those, end of Will Myers' career or contract years, although extended for a much longer period of time, I could say, at least we had those runs that were driven by Manny Machado.
Yeah. And this is even more basic and simplistic and reductive, but winning fixes everything. Like a ring, if you win a championship, I don't fucking care. Like the franchise can be in debt for a decade. You just need to win one. You just need to win one, and that's like obviously a lot easier said than done. And that is clearly the mentality with which these deals were all signed. It was that, hey, we've got 2 shots with the mega team. We've got 2 shots with the 2011 Miami Heat. Like, let's go. You know what I mean? And like, let's just see. Let's roll the dice. Doesn't seem like they're clicking quite like like Wade and LeBron and Bosh and fucking Mario Chalmers were clicking, but
Mario Chalmers, he was the leader of that team.
But okay, this is now we'll have this conversation off mic, but you know, anyway, they're right now pacing to be a little bit more like this year's Brooklyn Nets or last year's Brooklyn Nets. I don't know, Brooklyn Nets ever. So. Anyway, anything that you want to add on Manny before we wrap up this kid and caboodle?
Yeah, don't let the negative outlook of I think that Manny Machado will not think that the numbers support that it's unlikely that he lives up to his contract. That being said, it is fun to watch a star in his, early 30s still be a star, and we get to see that every day. So that's still, it's not my money, and he's fun to watch. So it does. I'm certainly not rooting for him not to pay off his contract, just so I can say, told you so. I'd rather just enjoy the baseball while I get to watch it.
Yeah, and by the way, I just want to clarify. It can sound like us levying this criticism is us criticizing Manny. We're not criticizing Manny. Manny's just a guy. Manny's just a guy showing up and doing his job. And we can talk about the BASE, BALL, sure. He's a Cancer. We've just established this. He's going to be very emotional. But, dude, the Padres offered him $350 million, and he signed on the dotted line. Like, our criticism is of the Padres organization, is of AJ Preller and Peter Seidler and whoever did, sign this, very poorly thought out deal. But, dude, Manny got his bag. And it's I still can't stand, all these people that are they're overpaid, blah, 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 blah. It's who gave them the contract? Why are these guys getting criticized? Criticize the Padres for overpaying them if you're going to be mad, but don't be, it's one thing about the team chemistry stuff, the 26 guys leaving in 26 cabs narrative, which I kind of agree with for this season. It just really seems like these guys just don't fuck with each other. They just don't click in a way that we would hope. But I don't think that, you can't get mad at them for being given a contract that someone offered them. You know what I mean? If we had signed them to a more team savvy deal, would that make their lack of performance okay? I don't think so. I think people would still be upset with them. If we had signed Xander Bogaerts to $180 million instead of $280 million, that would be a better outcome for the Padres. But would you be less mad at Xander? Because if so, that's dumb. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
exactly. He just gave them he just signed the contract that they gave him. So, and the same goes for Manny Machado. So, to wrap this thing up, we love Manny. We hope that we and the numbers are wrong, and that Manny has an Adrian Beltre renaissance, and he clearly is the type of athlete where I think you can see that. Happening. It's within the realm. There's a non-zero chance. It's within the realm of possibility, but it does require a bit of reinvention in some way, and it does require someone being committed to making changes. So, we'll see. We'll see if that is down the line. And John, we've got a decade to find out. So.
We got time, baby.
Yeah, I've already got a few gray hairs coming in, so by the time that Manny's out of here, I'll have a lot more. This has been we're back to our old roots, John, doing player episodes, player focuses.
Hell yeah.
And
we'll probably do more in the off season too, I would imagine.
I would imagine so.
If you like these,
So this has been an episode of Pods of Ever Placement. Please comment, subscribe on this YouTube video. We really like interacting with you guys, and it's a great help to us if you can do it. So if you like what we're doing, please do so. Subscribe to us, join our patreon.com/PadresHotTub, and we'll come at you next week with something fun that we haven't figured out yet. So for John Precoda, I'm Raphie Cantor. We will see you next time.